Let's unpack some of this a bit more. Joining us now is Adante Pointer, a trial attorney with a history of handling cases where inmates have died unattended. Adante, thanks for joining us. Let's get into some of the details of this report. Multiple failures by prison staff at the New York City Metropolitan Correctional Center in the suicide death of Epstein. They failed to conduct rounds, gave him too much bedding, failed to provide him with a cellmate while he was on suicide watch, but it agreed with the FBI that there was an absence of criminality. What do you make of all of this?
Well, what I make is that, what happened in this situation with Mr. Epstein is what happens, frankly, far too often across America, which is that these jails and the inmates are not being properly supervised, policies are not being followed, and people are essentially looking the other way while all of these failures continue to mount up, and they result in people taking their lives either by suicide or succumbing to the circumstances of their confinement, be it they're isolated and they have emotional issues and problems that then turn into suicidal thoughts and then turn into actual attempts at suicide, or people who, succumb to violence from inmate upon inmate. So the point is that when our loved ones or people we know or anyone finds themselves within a custodial situation in jail, they're relying upon the jail to protect them and keep them safe. That didn't happen here with Epstein, and that allowed him to escape justice. But that happens many times across America where people, unfortunately, are not being supervised and looked after the way that they're supposed to be and the way that the law requires the jailers to do it.
Yeah. We'll get to the landscape of prisons and jails here in just a moment, but survivors of Epstein's abuse, their lawyers, and even some of Epstein's lawyers have been calling for this report to be released for years. Epstein died back in 2019. Is it unusual for an investigation of this magnitude to take this long?
It's never quick enough for the people who really are relying upon the investigation to shed light on what happened to their loved one or shed light on what happened to the person that they were seeking to hold responsible by way of the criminal justice system. So 4 years is far too long for anyone to have to wait for this type of information. But frankly, even if it was released 4 days later, that wouldn't have been soon enough. The problem we have here is that this report, while it answers some questions, it leaves many other questions left unanswered or raises questions that need answers. And what I mean by that, they discuss so many failures that took place, be it security cameras that weren't working, guards who said that they fell asleep because they were working too many hours and overworked, cellmates who should have been there, who could have raised the first alarm about Epstein wanting to take his life, and that cellmate being transferred out of the cell just so happens to be the day before all this happens. And if you looked at the pictures that you showed, a bunch of bedding in his cell when you're only supposed to have one sheet, one piece of bed linen, but it appeared that there was, multiple pieces in there. You wonder, how does this happen? Is this just an unfortunate set of circumstances, or is this more intentional act and conduct, be it by the Bureau of Prisons or whoever? This is what continues to feed the conspiracy theorists, right? Which is they're saying, how can you have so many missteps that just so happened to happen on this one night, which then allowed what would have been one of America's most infamous suspects to escape justice by taking his own life? It's just hard to believe that all that stuff came together.
What happens next here? Does this open the door for any additional litigation when it comes to the Bureau of Prisons or the people who were in charge of looking after Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, 2 to 4 of the guards were referred to the criminal prosecutor's office for criminal investigation to press charges against them for the neglect or the derelict of duty. The prosecutors at this point have refused to press those charges. So victims are not going to necessarily have that as a path in order to get justice by way of holding the jailers responsible. And Epstein, as we know, committed suicide. So he's not here personally to have to answer the questions in the stand trial and have to atone, or I should say, explain away his conduct. The problem that now these victims are left holding the bag. Now, they can still go after Epstein's estate, but we know that wealthy people tend to hide their assets and things. And this could be a situation where victims are left without any recourse. And that's not the way this is supposed to happen, which is why it was that much more important for the guards to do their job, protect Epstein, keep him from harming himself, so that one day these victims had a shot at the justice they deserved.
Yeah. Trial attorney Adante Pointer, thanks so much for joining us tonight, folks.